Welcome everyone to another session for the Scotland DevFest Scotland online. Today we have an amazing presentation. Thank you so much, Sasha, for agreeing to join us and to share your knowledge with our community. Please feel free to, for those that are joining, to post your questions in the chat. And just a reminder that this session is going to be recorded and we're going to upload it in our YouTube channel. And yeah, Sasha, please start and thank you again.
Thank you, Patty, for that kind introduction. And also thank you for the opportunity to speak at the DevFest Glasgow online sessions here about one of my topics I'm very passionate about. It's about new APIs that can come to our browsers every day or every year so far, and they enhance our lives as developers so much. So I'm very passionate about this topic, also very passionate about the topic animations, and I'm very happy to share my knowledge with you on this great event. So let's start with a little introduction of myself. My name is Sascha Lehmann. I'm a consultant at Thinktecture. We are a consultant agency based in Karlsruhe in Germany. And primarily, I'm a Angular expert and also provide our customers with additional UI UX expertise. So that's also a topic I'm quite interested in, and it also fits the topic of animations and styling very good because it's also a topic that falls into the UI UX category so far. So feel free to follow me on X or Twitter or other channels like LinkedIn and so far. I also will post my slides there and the repository. So feel free to have a look into this kind of resources later on. So before we start with the overall topic, what view transitions are and what they are used to do or what they're there for, we need to clarify some kind of topics. So we're the hybrid or the cross-platform development. What exactly is this? So that we have a common knowledge base of that topic. So I think we are all developers. So most of us are web developers, but there are different type of developing spaces so far. So at first there's native development. So you natively develop for a special OS or platform like Android, iOS, or Windows, for example. And on the other hand, there's our space, there's the web development space, where we have our various front ends out there like Angular, React, Svelte, and so on. And there's also a space between. And that's where the cross-platform or hybrid development part is settled. So when we want to provide any kind of product or, for example, an app, to the various platforms that are out there for the various operating systems, we need to have a separate development team. So we need an Android development team that ships an Android app to the Play Store. We also have to have a team for iOS development and ships it to the App Store and so on. So it can be quite costly or pricey at a point, and we also have a lot of different code bases. How nice would it be if we have just one little code base that we also can provide our mobile apps with? So, and that's where the hybrid part comes in. So imagine that we have a little app or a web application. For example, we developed it with Angular. I always will have some little Angular examples there because I'm an Angular developer by heart. I hope that's okay for you. But feel free to also think of these examples. They also work with Svelte, React, and so on, or your framework that you love to use. So imagine you develop an application with your favorite framework and just wrap it in some kind of way, like, for example, with Capacitor. You can wrap your web app into a package for iOS or for Android development, so you can just ship it on the platform. And that's exactly what this kind of wrappers do. Capacitor, for example, they not just wrap it, so they also give you some additional APIs that you can use. So within the web, we are not able to use every part of the native operating system down there. And that's also a big part where this kind of other project comes in that we talk about later, Project Fugu, if you just heard of that name. So, and Capacitor tries to connect us with some sort of native features, like, for example, the camera usage, usage of SQL databases, and so on. So with the help of these wrappers like Capacitor, Cordova, Capacitor, and, for example, Electron for the desktop kind of setting, we have the opportunity to ship them in the corresponding package for the operating system and provide them to our users. We just have one code base. We have our web app. We can deploy this web app on its own. We can package it and also ship it to the corresponding Play stores. That's very nice to have. There's also PWAs. PWAs is a web standard that also allows us to make our web app in the browser installable. I will show an example later. And it's also very cool because we don't need any kind of store that our app is provided in. So we just open the app in our browser, click install, and we get a nice little isolated version of our web app without browser bars, etc. So you can't really identify if it's a native app or a web app that's running anymore. So, and now to our topic, view transitions. But what is the problem view transitions want to solve for us? So when we think about native apps we use on a daily basis on our phones, for example, we are used to certain kinds of animations with that. So, for example, animations like this. And if you think about these kinds of animations and want to transform them to the web, you may know that it can be quite tedious to do, because when we are in the web development realm, we are tied to the DOM. So every element or every component that we create within our applications is tied to a DOM node. And if we want to achieve some animations, like, for example, this kind of container transforms that are called, we need to, for example, take the element, put it out of the DOM so we can transform it on its own, or maybe position it absolute, then we enlarge it over the screen. So that might be a use case where we think, okay, that's something I'm capable to do. But there's also some scenarios where, for example, routing takes place. So you click on a card, it transforms, and in the background there's also some sort of routing between different parts of your application. And when it comes to routing, it gets even trickier. So imagine you have the card to click, you also have this routing process, your card needs to transform. And in this transformation process, you need to keep in mind when we route in our applications, the former state will be destroyed. So when we want to have this kind of animation, we need to preserve the former state, the new state, and we have these in parallel in some kind of way, and need to make this transition there. So it can be quite tedious to do, and that's where the View Transition API wants to help us in that way. One step back, the View Transition API is also an API that came to the browsers in the early past, I will say, and is also part of the initiative like Project Fugu I mentioned before. Project Fugu is an initiative to make our browsers or the web development realm even native than it was before. So in the browser in the past, we had some issues accessing, for example, the file system, or maybe you know the push API. So we want to publish some push API notifications to our customer when we have, for example, mobile devices. That wasn't the case before there was a dedicated API for it. And with Project Fugu, we want to close that gap that exists between native and web development. And it's a very cool project, and it's also developed in the future. So there are some cool new APIs around the corner. And if you want to check out the latest status of that project, feel free to go to that link and check out what's up in the future with that project. So, view transition API. We see there's a little, we have good support so far in terms of browser support. So it's in our Chromium-based browser since version 111 plus, and also with the latest iOS update. So with Safari 18 or iOS 18, it also was shipped to the iOS platform. So we are now able to support view transitions on a broad variety of browsers. Firefox is still missing. That's it's a bit sad, but I hope that they will be follow up or catch up with the API development in the future. I heard some rumors that it should be shipped in Firefox in the first quarter of 2025. I have no. I don't know if it will be really shipped there, but let's hope that they will ship it there so we have the full browser support or the major browser supporting in that way. So these kind of container trends, let's have a look at first what these kind of view transitions are capable of. I brought you a little example with me. I'm quite a sporty person. I'm interested in sports, and so I thought that it would be quite nice to do some little example app with some kind of sports or workout planner. So on the left-hand side, we have a app or a PWA, a web app of our choice. So we have it's quite functional. So we have some navigation in there. We have some workout planner. We can choose various workouts. We can investigate the workout. So we have a detail page. So in terms of functionality, we would say it's quite nice. It works so far. So it's good to go as a product, so we can ship it. So, but if you use it on your mobile phone, you will recognize that there's something is missing. It doesn't feels the way I'm used to feel when I use some certain kind of apps. So speaking of the kind of container transforms earlier, I told you. So on the right-hand side, I animated it with some sort of container transforms, and for my guide, it looks quite astonishing. So let's have a look there. So when I choose open the workout planner, we see this nice little container transform animation. I will slow it down so that we can inspect it in detail. And also when we open the details, we have this little nice transforming animations here. It's quite cool. And I think when you put this on a native device, it's quite indistinguishable if I'm just using a web app or a native app. So the native developers, they have dedicated APIs for that. And with the view transitions, we are also capable of doing that just with the use of CSS. And that's even cooler. So we don't need any kind of fancy JavaScript to enable this sort of nice view container transitions. In our case, it's just the use of one single line of JavaScript, and the rest is CSS. And I will slow down the animation a bit for you so we can investigate it a bit more. So if you didn't know, in the Chromium-based browsers, when you type Command Shift or Control Shift on the Windows machine, you get this command bar, and when you type in animation, you can show this little animations panel down here. I will enlarge it a bit for you so you can see it better. And within this animation tab, we have the opportunity to investigate our animations even more. So it's very good for animation development, debugging, and also investigating if everything works the way I wanted it to use. So we have here the opportunity to slow our animation down to 25% or even 10%. So in this scenario, the animation will play with 10% of its original speed. So let's have a look. So now it's very slow, and I can have a very in-depth look at my animation if everything works the way I want it to be. So it's quite nice. And also, if I want even more control of my animation, I can repeat it to 100%, and I also can pause the animation. I click, nothing happens so far, but I get this little frame here. And within this little frame, I'll also get this kind of time view where I can have this little slider. I can move forward and backwards, and you see in the background the animation is playing back and forth. So I have very fine-grained control over my animation, and I also see the keyframe animations I defined in my CSS that are playing right in the background. I can investigate when the animation start, when they stop, and how the easings work together. So it's quite cool, and it's a very, very interesting feature to use when you develop animations. And now let's dive into how this can be achieved with just one line of JavaScript. Here we can see the only line of JavaScript we need. The new API enhances the document in our JavaScript with a new API that is called start view transition. And this function takes some callback function. And what this callback function does, I will come back to that later. But let's have a little look how the browser manages this kind of stuff in the background, just to let us use some pure CSS to do so. So in the background, the process is like the following. We have this before and this after view. And what the browser does is I start the transition, the function gets called, so start view transition is called, and for the end user, the view freezes at this point. So there's some things happening in the background. So the browser takes a screenshot of the old view, then does the DOM changes, for example, navigation and so on, and then we have a new representation of the DOM. And then the browser takes a new screenshot. In this case, it's also a live view. I will come back to that later. Why is it a live view in that case and not a screenshot like the first one? And when these screenshots are done, or the snapshots are done, the browser gets notified, and the default thing that happens is just a little crossfade of the corresponding sites. So let's have a look how this works in practice. We just can try it out on the left-hand side. So here's nothing animated so far. Let's dive in on view transitions to that. Like I mentioned before, I have prepared a Angular application for that. And for the Angular framework, there's a nice little configuration or integration with view transitions. So the Angular team also provided us with a nice integration of the view transition API for the routing process. So in terms of Angular, we don't have to configure very much in our application. I just open the app config file, so it's a nice little setup, the standalone setup for Angular if some Angular developers are around here. And we have here our router where we can configure routes within our app. And to enable view transitions with that approach, we just have to type or add a little configuration function with view transitions here. And with view transitions, we enable view transitions for the whole routing process, and that's all I need. So when I jump back in the app, we can see a subtle view transition. It's not as noticeable as it should be. So let's hop in, open the animations panel, reduce the animation time, and have a look how it is looking now. Now we can notice this crossfade effect I mentioned earlier. So this is the default behavior the browser gives us when we enable view transition or use view transition in their purest form. So we have this nice little fading animations. We have this before screenshot, this after screenshot, and they are getting crossfaded. So that's quite nice for some kind of use case. So we get this behavior out of the box, get a little subtle crossfading effect. It's quite cool. But what happens there in the background, or what happens technically in the browser? So what the browser does for us, it creates a new pseudo DOM tree that sits on top everything, so it does not interfere with any kind of other elements I put there in the DOM. So the browser creates a new view transition DOM node that sits directly under the HTML tag or HTML node in our document. And with that, it also creates a group and an image pair. And this image pair is also mentioned are these before and after screenshots. So old is the before state and new is the after state. So these elements, there's some overlay root that is the root of the view transitions. Then we have this little group that's also a root of a part of that view transition. And we have this image pair with the old and the new image. So, and the cool thing is each of these elements is a DOM element. It sits in the DOM. So because it sits in the DOM, it is accessible via CSS. And that's why we can do this kind of animations just with the use of CSS. And that's quite cool. But there's something we should keep in mind. We have this view transition old, for example. This is the screenshot. So it's an actual image. So we don't have the possibility to manipulate the background color or the color within that node, because the view transition old is an image, and we can't access images with the help of CSS properties. And we also should keep in mind, if you want to use some kind of CSS properties within there, we need to keep in mind that the view transition element sits on top of everything. And in most cases, we define our CSS properties within the root element, and maybe it can be quite some tedious, because you can't access the corresponding CSS property within the because it sits on top. So let's have a look in the browser back there. I will need to rearrange a bit here so we can have a look there. I trigger the animation and we see that there's this little DOM loads that are created, and we also see that they are getting destroyed after the animation is done. So I will pause the complete animation for a little bit more investigation. We see here we have the view transition. We also have this root. We have the old and the new image, and we also see that they are highlighted in the DOM. And when we see here, we have this nice little crossfading effect. So we see that both of them are there. And this kind of crossfading effect, how is it achieved? So if we investigate a little bit more, we see that there are also some kind of animation names applied to that old image, though with the stash UA view transition fade out. So this kind of animation should be defined somewhere. And these kind of animations are provided within the browser style sheet. Every browser is shipped with a certain kind of base style sheet. And also for view transitions, there are base styles that are applied for the base kind of view transitions, so we get a default behavior. So this crossfade behavior is behind this fade in and fade out animation setting, and these are the default settings, for example, with the browser style sheet of the Chromium browser. So it is quite nice to overlap or navigate with this kind of crossfade, but in my example, we saw different parts of the animation are rotating or animated. So I did not have the case that I have just one side, the new side, and they are crossfaded. So what if I want to animate certain other elements on my page? So for this case, the view transition API also got our back, because in this example, for example, I want to animate a header, in this case, separately. And what happens there is that with the help of just one CSS property, we can tell the browser that it should cut out or take a separate screenshot of a certain part within our view. And with that, we can animate this with separate animations. So in this case, I have cut out the header, and in the new picture, I put the header down there, and the browser also automatically detects this cutout parts, and also notices if they changed with position. So if the header was up there and now it's down there, the browser also applies an automatic position transition. That's quite amazing. I will show you that in an example in a few seconds. So what is this property we need to apply to cut out our certain parts there? It's the new property that is called view transition name. So for that part of my view that I want to animate separately with the help of the view transition API, I just need to apply view transition name there, and maybe in this case I apply header. The naming is completely free. It's not a string, so don't apply the ticks there. So just type in a variable name of your choice. But keep in mind if you have these pairs. So you have an before part of the header and an after part of the header, you need to reference the same name. So you have one pair of that view transition name. You also maybe have some parts where you just have the before state and no after state. That's totally fine. But it's not allowed to have many, more than one-to-one connection of the corresponding naming, because the browser will can't then, in this case, can't distinguish which part it should animate, or so it can only match one-to-one part of the corresponding name. What the browser does is also it creates a new group for this cutout element. So in this case, for header and header text, two groups are separately created. They are also put under view transitions and get corresponding DOM nodes, so we can also access them via CSS. So let's have a look how it works in practice. In my example, I just will take this little header and animate it together with this. I should enable this again, put it back to 100%, so it plays quite nice. It would be a nice if we could animate this kind of pictures together with that approach. But unfortunately, in my case, I use the ng-for loop in that case to render out these elements. So in this case, we need to keep in mind some special thing, because when I have just one list element there, and if I name this kind of image with a certain view transition name, I have multiple instances of that name. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would have 5 elements with the view transition name, for example, preview image or something, and the browser will tell me I have more than one element that's matching the view transition name property. I can't do the proper animation. So that's what we need to keep in mind if we use some kind of automatic rendering there. In this case, we need some additional logic here. So for example, this view transition attribute is just applied when I click a certain element. So when I click it, the class gets applied, the transition is triggered, and everything works fine because I have one matching element. In this case, for easier purposes, I have this header here, and I just want to animate it together with some kind of image. It doesn't make sense in this case, but to show you that the browser automatically animates this little part is also, I think it will do the trick. So in this case, we are in our workout planner. Workout planner HTML. See that we have this header element here, and within the header, I will do the trick and give it a view transition name. In this case, I will choose header. And now we need the corresponding part in the later image. So when I navigate here, I have this exercise detail. So for example, in this case, it's push-ups. So let's go to the exercise detail component. And we have this image tag here, and this image is the corresponding image of that detail. And if I give it the view transition name header, it should do the trick. So because we have this one-to-one match of this view transition name, the browser should be capable of animating the stuff. And we just saw that it works. So if I go to any kind of a site now, it's also quite a cool effect that we achieved here. So it falls down. So the browser sees that the former part we defined is up here, and now the later part, so the new part, is a bit down there. So it also transitions that with a nice moving action. And you saw I just had to add 2 CSS properties there to get this nice little effect. I think it's quite cool out of the box, and we can enhance it even more. So if we like to enhance it more, so you need get some rotating stuff or scaling up, like the things we saw earlier in my example, you feel free to do. Just add some keyframe CSS animations, add the animation name there for the corresponding view transition property there, and you're good to go. So that's quite cool and awesome. And now I want to show you another thing. I earlier mentioned that the second part of the screen, or the second screenshot, the new picture that is taken, is not actually a screenshot, so a plain image, so it's a live view. And imagine the case like we have here. That's the demo of Bramus Van Dam, the developer at Google that is currently developing the view transition API and other cool features on the web platform. That was the original showcase for the view transition API from Google. And here we see that we could also have the possibility that there's some kind of video playing. And in this case, when I go open the card, we see the view transition happening here, up there. But what would happen if we have some kind of video? So if it would be actually just a screenshot, the video would freeze during the animation process, and we have this stuttering effect. So we have a little bit of interruption in the video. And when we have a look here, nice and smooth, no interruptions there. And that's where the part of the live view comes in, because the browser doesn't just take a screenshot, so it's a live view. It's animated properly. So if we stop the animation there, we also can see that is a live view here. So when I'm moving here back and forth, the video just plays as smooth as it did before. So no interruptions, nothing to see there. So that's quite cool. And keep in mind, it's not a picture, it's a live view, the new image. But there's also the restrictions there that for modifications of background color or something else have no effect there, because it's a live view and not an actual DOM element that gets transformed. Keep that in mind for that. So now we have another topic to talk about, and another topic are scroll-driven animations. Scroll-driven animations are also part of that new set of cool animation APIs that came to the browser lately. You see, sadly, there's just support currently for the Chromium-based browsers. And I saw in the chat, what about API support for Microsoft Edge? So Microsoft Edge is also a Chromium-based browser, so you have the support also in Edge so far. The scroll-driven animations are currently not supported in any kind of WebKit-based browsers or the Firefox. Also, like I mentioned earlier, I hope this will be done in the future or in the near future, so we can make use of that, because scroll-driven animations also will increase our life as developers very, very much, or to make it even easier, because I will show you some examples later on where we currently need a lot of JavaScript to achieve that. So let's have a look there. So we, in our animations or within our documents within the browser, or animations in general, we have a timeline. So when we open our application, the time starts, and we close our application, the time ends. Between, there's a eternal timeline, so it naturally progresses. So from one point I start the animation, it has a certain amount of time that it takes, maybe 500 milliseconds, maybe a second, then it stops, then I start it again, and so on. So we have a current flow of time. That's the natural process, or the default flow of time. And now the scroll-driven animations introduce a new set of timelines. So we have a new property that we can apply to the animation property, or the CSS animation property, and it's called animation timeline. And within that timeline, we can add animation scroll. And with animation scroll, we have the possibility to attach our animation timeline. So, for example, we have an animation that takes 500 milliseconds, and we have this nice little timeline. Or if or more precisely, if you think about this little part down there, not memory, so this part down here, that's the timeline of your animation. And within this, when I pause the animation, I have the complete control of that animation. So I played it back and forth how I liked it. So think about that with scroll-driven animations. So you could, or with that API, you now can attach your animation timeline to a certain point of scrolling within your application. So think about, for example, this trend that we had some years ago, which is called the parallax effect. So you have certain pictures with I scroll down within my web page, and we have these certain pixels that overlap each other and make this cool parallax effect. So we needed, in the past, we needed some JavaScript to determine how much I scrolled and how to position these pictures that the effect is achieved. And now we don't need this JavaScript anymore, because we just have some kind of animation, attach the scroll timeline to it, and the API automatically detects the scroller. So this is the object that has the scroll bars we want to track. So if we have a scrollable element and we attach this animation to the scrollable element, and we scroll within that element up and down or from side to side, the animation is played back and forth together with the scroller. So I have that showcase within my also animated example here. I need to play the animations again, and now we can see when I scroll down, we have this little effect up here. So the header shrinks down, and also the picture begins to fade out a bit. So this is also achieved with the power of scroll-driven animations. And we should also be able to see some kind of scrolling effects here. It reduces the height here in that case, and it's just a cool and nice feature. I just have to apply this new timeline, apply it to the scroller. If you don't add a certain scroller element here, the API searches for the nearest scrollable element. In my case, it's just the complete document. So it listens for the scroll progress within the document and applies the corresponding animation there. That's quite cool, and a very nice feature to reduce the usage of JavaScript for animating within your application. You have a scroller element that you can define there. It's also its nearest, that's the default, root or self. And you also can define the axis. So if you have some vertical scrolling there, you also feel free to listen to that axis then. And we have another timeline here. It's also it's called view. So imagine, for example, if in the past we wanted to animate some element in terms of how much it already progressed within a view. So in the past we needed some kind of intersection observer for that. So we needed to look, okay, the element is just now 20% visible within my view. Now let's start the animation. So we needed an intersection observer. We needed some JavaScript to accomplish that. And now we just get another nice little timeline function here. So with view, we can just define an animation that is based on the visibility of a certain element within the view. I apply this this part, or no, in my example I don't have an example for that in my little example there. But imagine if you have an image and you scroll it within the view, and it enlarges like that. We have this kind of animations. We saw them a lot, and I also have a little page that I want to show you. It's scroll-driven animations.style. That's the overall scroll-driven animations page, where there are tons of examples there what you can achieve with the power of scroll-driven animations. For example, this little reading or scrolling indicator just with the use of CSS, also with a JavaScript or CSS version, so that you can directly compare the impact. Or some example like this. So this is very nice feature that's achieved just with the help of CSS and the new scroll-driven animations API. And there's even more. So like this cover flow, for example. For example, this cover flow also just achieved with the help of the scroll-driven animation API. Not thinkable of that in the past, because if we wanted to achieve such cool things, we needed to have a use of JavaScript there. And the cool thing is, these things are just JavaScript CSS based now, we don't have to think about some issues regarding performance of our applications, because we don't need JavaScript anymore. The application does not affect our main thread within the browser, and is also shipped to another part, the compositor thread within the browser. So the compositor thread is handling the animation stuff for us there, and it does not impact our main thread in terms of performance. So we don't have to fight that fight if it comes to view transitions there. And also in terms of playing around with that, you also have some tools. I think down here, yeah, that's a very cool tool for this kind of view of the view timeline I mentioned. For example, we have down here this little rectangle, and now it starts being visible within the view. This is our view in that case, and we can play around with that. So it enlarges within a certain percentage here, and we can play it back and forth. And on the right-hand side, you can play around with the settings here to get a better feeling for the corresponding properties. Which properties do I need to set? Which properties do I need to set to achieve a certain kind of inset? So we do not want to start the animation playing when it's just one pixel of the element that is visible. Maybe in this case we have this area here, so the animation just plays when it encounters a certain part of that inset there. So very cool. Keep that in mind. I also have the links to that site attached in my slides. So if you missed the chance to copy them, I also will provide them within my slides. So in this case, we have the view timeline, also cool feature. We also get some view properties there to define some insets and so on. We also have some aliases for naming, for easier naming conventions, so we don't need to write from 0 to 100%. So some naming aliases, but I would recommend just play around with it and get a feeling for it yourself. It's the best way to learn a new API anyway. So in that case, I just showed you the example, and now a little look into the future. What will happen next in the cases of view transition API and so on. And for that, I want to show you some other creative ways to use view transitions API for the view transition API, for example. In the early examples, I showed you that we use the view transition API to navigate between different views, container transforms, and so on. That's I also admit that's the primary use case of the view transition API. We transition between different views. But if we are a bit more creative, like for example in that example, we also could apply this certain kind of behavior, for example, for components. So in this case, I have accordion component here, and if I open and close the different parts or sheets of the accordion, we also have this effect. We have the an open part and a closed part, and we also have this before and after state. So one was open before, then it is closed, and we have another opened. So the browser also can make some screenshots here and animate between these elements. So in this case, it's also quite a nice and creative way to use the view transition API. And I also have a nice little example here. I'm currently working on the second part of my view transition article, and this is the demo for that, because maybe we can think about leveraging the view transition API also for some kind of sorting stuff or sorting animations. In this example, I have a list of six of my colleagues, and if I order them, for example, in odd or even, and so on, and we achieve some nice little sorting effects here. This example just needs some additional usage of directives and some bit arranging, some sort of logic to be proper applied to work together with the view transition API. But I think it's quite a nice feature to enhance also some kind of sorting stuff, because the view transition API is not intentionally intended to be used for such use cases. There will be also another addition to the view transition API. It's called scoped transitions, so that we also can leverage these kind of view transitions on a component level. So in our case, when I animate the view transition, sorry, the DOM nodes are attached right directly under the HTML element. And with this kind of scope transitions, we will also get the chance to attach them to any sub level of our elements. And with that, it's maybe this kind of scope transitions might be a better suited possibility for such kind of sorting animations, or maybe accordions and so on, because they don't affect the whole page and just affect a sub part of the page. But we also keep in mind that then we need to think about Z indexes or possible overlappings and so on again. But this will come in the future, and also we need to wait for full browser support for scroll-driven animations and view transitions. But I think it's quite doable to use view transitions now. We also have the possibility to just disable them if our browser or of the browser of our customer doesn't support it right now, and fall back to some kind of basic animations there, and make use of it for the browsers that also support it nowadays. And with Chromium-based and WebKit browsers, we are good to go so far, in my opinion. So that was my little talk about view transitions. I hope I could give you some inspiration in that case, and I hope I could enlighten you or encourage you to use them within your projects, play around with them, and make the web a little bit more native, or make your mobile apps feel more native now and less indistinguishable from native apps. So feel free to use it. If you have any questions, ask them now, or feel free to reach out to me on X, LinkedIn, and so on. And I'm also happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sascha. That was amazing. I did web development for a long time, and I certainly learned a bunch of new things. So thank you. It was really cool, and I loved your terminal.
Thank you.
Can you share your configuration? I loved it. It was amazing.
My terminal. I use it's Alacrity. So
Right?
terminal emulator is Alacrity, and I use Tmax for the window management,
Yeah.
for the tile management here, and I use NeoVim for development here. So
You really have a really good like your terminal game is way up.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank you
really
so
cool.
much. Thank you so
Um,
much.
yeah, well, thank you. I saw some questions in the chat that you answered. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, it was really an honor for us to have you. And this session will be again uploaded to our YouTube channel. And for the rest of the community, keep an eye. We still have more online sessions to come. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bye.
Thank you. See you later.